I'm in my happy place. This is the kind of watch that just makes me feel good. There are certain combinations of function, price, looks, story, and dimensions that just work for me. They're my personal sweet spots. You probably have some too. I have many. Too many. It's kind of a problem. When I look at this Sinn 856 UTC, I think, why have I never owned one of these before? So I really appreciate that my buddy Brian let me borrow his for a few days. We're gonna get back to Brian in a few minutes, but whether or not this watch gets back to him, we'll see. If you're not already familiar with Sinn watches, I envy you, you sweet summer child. There's so much to learn and so many interesting watches to check out, and all from only the last 60 years. Sinn was founded in Frankfurt, Germany by Helmut Sinn. Helmut Sinn was a pilot in the Luftwaffe during World War II, and after being shot down over Russia, he transitioned to a role as a flying instructor. After the war, he was a race car driver for a short time, until 1956 when he founded Sinn Spezialuhren. In its first few years, the company did not make watches, but was an importer of Heuer chronographs and stopwatches. It wasn't until 1961 that Sinn began producing instruments. Watches, for sure, but also cockpit clocks for the German Air Force. And that theme of no-nonsense, technically advanced, and relatively low-cost tools continues even today. It even threw a change in the company's ownership in 1994. I haven't been collecting watches long enough to know if Sinn seems like a different company than it did 30 years ago, but I do know that whatever they're doing now works for me. And this 856 UTC is a perfect case in point. This isn't a new reference. The 856 UTC has been around since at least 2009 and is still in production today as far as I can tell. It's a relatively stealthy and unassuming watch that's surprisingly interesting once you dig into it, kind of the opposite of me. The 856 is 40mm across, 47mm long, and only 11mm thick. It has 200 meters of water resistance and weighs about 135 grams. It has 20mm lug widths and drilled lugs. It can be bought on a strap for $2,110 or on this bracelet for $2,460. If you can, get this watch on a bracelet. Yeah, it looks good and it's really comfortable on my 7-inch wrist, but there's another reason to get the bracelet. This bracelet and case are made of Ternamented Steel. Need I say more? Oh, I need? Okay, so, Ternamented Steel is hardened steel. Normal 316 stainless steel has a hardness of about 220 Vickers. Ternamented steel like this here has 1200 Vickers of hardness. That's more than 5 times harder. It doesn't make the watch scratch-proof, but it makes it pretty damn scratch-resistant. Which brings us back to our buddy Brian. For the first few years Brian owned this watch, he wore it to work every day. And not just sitting at a desk, but working in a warehouse, moving heavy materials, being physical, and not babying this watch. For years, every day. And yet this thing still looks nearly perfect. I've done far more damage to watches while eating sandwiches than Brian did to this watch with years of active work. Seriously, I once scratched a crystal while eating a PB&J. Jealous? This hardened steel really appeals to someone with my combination of active lifestyle and obsessive fear of scratches. Ternamented steel is pretty cool tech. But wait, there's more. This watch also features 2 technologies to help keep the inside of the 856 dry. First, the 856 is filled with an inert gas. Sinn used to use argon in its watches, that's why sometimes you see an AR on Sinn dials. But a few years ago Sinn switched to using nitrogen instead. Sinn says the gas helps prevent moisture from getting into the watch and helps the lubricants maintain their proper viscosities. As we always say in my house, keep your case dry and your lubricants viscous. The watch also uses a copper sulfate capsule to absorb any moisture that does make its way into the watch. The capsule is embedded near the lug. As it absorbs moisture, it turns from white to dark blue. This one is 13 years old and is still pretty light. The 856 is also anti-magnetic to about 1000 Gauss, or a mil-Gauss, and resistant to low-pressure environments like those in an airplane. Maybe some of this tech is gimmicky. I really don't know much about dehumidification of watches, despite my interest in viscosity, but anti-magnetism and certainly scratch resistance are strong pluses for me. And so is a GMT function. Yeah, Sinn calls this a UTC, but that's the same thing for this purpose. This style of GMT is often called a collar GMT. That's when the GMT hand is the one that jumps while setting. The other type of GMT, like this Rolex GMT Master, this is called a traveler GMT, where the local hour hand jumps while setting. I hope Rolex doesn't revoke my GMT when I say that I think I prefer the collar style. That's because I'm much more likely to be calling people in different time zones than I am to be traveling to different time zones. This functionality is thanks to the ETA 2983-2 movement. Now that's because this specific piece was made before Sinn began transitioning to Sellita movements. If you're lucky enough to buy a new 856 UTC today, it'll house the Sellita SW330 movement. Same function, same magnetic resistance, same quality. The 20mm lug spacing, the drilled lugs, and the black dial of this watch make it a strap monster. You can't exactly dress it up, but you can change its look dramatically with different straps. But I really like this bracelet, which is how I've been wearing the 856. I've heard people complain about Sinn clasps, and many people have asked me about them. Folks seem to have issues with the fact that the clasp isn't milled but is stamped. Honestly, I don't get it. This clasp works great and is comfortable. My only issue with the clasp is that just like on the 556, it doesn't open quite wide enough. I guess I have a strange hand size to wrist size ratio because I kind of have to squeeze my hand to get it in the watch. And there are other things about this watch that could be improved. The lume is not great. This is the situation with most Sinn pilot watches I've seen. Maybe the idea is that pilots don't need as much lume as divers do, but Sinn should know their customers better than that. We all want lume so bright that it'll cure blindness. And Sinn could do it, but it don't. Another issue is with the GMT hand, or excuse me, the UTC hand. Because it's short and the UTC markers are close to the axis, they're likely to be covered by the main minutes hand or main hour hand. If the UTC time was read further from the center of the dial, this issue would be mitigated. And these are relatively minor criticisms because I like this watch. Or maybe I like this watch because my criticisms are minor. Like I said, the 856 UTC is right in one of my sweet spots. I guess you could call it my low luxury sports watch spot. And throw in a GMT complication, and that it's from a lesser known brand, and one that's smallish and independent. Oh, and it's scratch resistant too. This watch checks a lot of my boxes. Don't be creepy. It puts me in my happy place. I don't expect that's the case for everyone, but hey, that's why different references and different brands exist. Maybe I'll buy an 856 UTC someday, maybe. But I'll tell you my dirty secret. I don't make these videos for likes or money or getting a table at Taco Bell without a reservation. The reason I make these videos is so I get to try watches without buying them. And this 856 UTC, this is why I do what I do.